You know, it's pretty bullshit. Having Europe changing the name of a video game to a much less cooler name, like Ratchet & Clank 2 going Commando to Lock and Loaded, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater changed to skateboarding, but the cherry to the top of the cake is Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, changed to Gateway to Glimmer. Since everyone else has complained about it, it's probably best if I didn't. I mean, it's not like you can go back in time and change the course of history. Or can you? Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna build a time machine so I can travel back in time and make sure that Ripto's Rage is in the front cover in Australia.
And so, Cheese and Crackers thought he can travel back in time. But because he wasn't good at science, he didn't know how to make a time machine. So, he went back home and did what he does best when he feels upset. He made some Vegemite on toast.
It's fucking great! Hello to all my wonderful cheese balls out there, and welcome back to another cracking episode of Cheese and Crackers. Spyro the Dragon started off slow in terms of sales, but once Christmas time came around, it sold pretty well and everyone was playing it. Everyone. Kids, teenagers, adults, and elderly, they were all getting into the fun. But now, it's time to see if the next installment can hold up or even make a better platforming experience in Spyro 2. Ripto's? No. Gateway? You know what? I'm just gonna say Spyro 2 for now on.
Spyro the Dragon is a good platform game, but it was pretty simple. Well, actually, it was really simple, but this game had a great idea when it comes to collecting, and the level structures were awesome. And 1 year later, Insomniac released a second game towards the Spyro series. Whatever Spyro the Dragon did good or just lacked, Spyro 2 did hell of a lot better. And trust me, get used to the word better a lot in this video. As a matter of fact, let's put the better counter down at the bottom right here. So far, I've said it 4 times now, so let's see if we can keep it up, and let's see just how better this game is comparing to its older brother. And yes, I have assumed its gender. So fight me. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage / Gateway to Glimmer. Spyro and Sparks are feeling bored of the Artisan world, and they both decide it's best to take a vacation in Dragon Shores, which is basically Disney World when you think about it. Meanwhile, Alora, Hunter, and the Professor are trying to hack the portal so a dragon can appear. Successful at the outcome, Spyro and Sparks ended up in the world of Avalar. Before Alora and Hunter can explain their actions, in comes the villains for this game. Ripto, along with Crush and Gulp. Crush and Gulp are the bodyguards for Ripto as he takes full center stage as the main villain.
Ripto is an absolute madman who enjoys power and, well, between you and me, he hates dragons.
I hate dragons!
Before Ripto can do anything, the fairy zaps Ripto and he orders Crush to crush her. The fairy moves out of the way, hitting Ripto, and his scepter gets golloped by Gulp. Wow, that was some great writing skills there. The enemies retreat, and with the story taking place, it's up to Spyro to stop Ripto's plans of taking over the world. Once again, the story is simple. The bad guy shows up, does a bad thing, and here's the hero saving the day. But this time, Ripto is a much more better villain than Gnasty Gnorc. Because unlike Gnasty Gnorc, Ripto actually interacts with Spyro from start to finish, making Ripto a more bigger threat to Spyro and a more memorable character. It's really know why he is the best villain in the Spyro series. Before we can get started on talking about the gameplay, Spyro's voice in this game is 10 times better than the annoying childish voice in Spyro the Dragon.
You bet.
Spyro is being voiced by Tom Kenny, who is mostly known for being the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants. He even voices other characters throughout the game, and there's one level where he's basically doing a SpongeBob voice.
We've always had trouble with the gear grinders. Thank you, Spyro! You've deactivated all of the electric barriers!
But anyway, now we can get started.
Hi, Spyro! Welcome to Glimmer!
Get it? Get the joke? Cause the game in Australia is called Gateway to Glimmer?
The first thing that immediately hits you is that awesome soundtrack. The soundtrack is more upbeat, more catchier, and yes, more better than the first game. Although there are some songs that I'm not a fan of, but that is just my opinion, of course. And that does not mean that the soundtrack is terrible overall. And the level designs. I have a lot to say about them. In a good way, of course. The level designs are not only better this time around, but each level has its own unique story. Every level in Spyro 2 has an intro for what's the problem in that particular level, and an outro for resolving the problem and getting a good resolution. The levels does feel less open world and more straightforward, but usually you branch through different paths to compete in a variety of mini-games. More on them later. What's cool as well within the levels is each enemy and each ally is different. Again, making the enemies more unique and each character having their own personality. Much more better than that thank you for releasing me every goddamn 15 minutes.
Thank you for releasing me.
No. 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 No.
While I'm at it with the gameplay, Spyro controls much more better. Spyro did control well in Spyro the Dragon, but I just felt that it wasn't tight enough for me. But in Spyro 2, Spyro moves more tighter and more smoothly compared to the previous game. Another new move Insomniac added is the hover, and this is extremely helpful when you're trying to glide from one place to another. The first game didn't have this, but it was never required. You can glide to any place you want and didn't have to think about using the hover because 9 times out of 10 you'll easily make it. But with Spyro 2, it is an absolute requirement to use. Remember how I said that the gems don't really have a purpose in Spyro the Dragon, as it's only there just for the sake of collecting? Well, in Spyro 2, the gems do have a purpose. If you collect enough gems, you can sell them to Moneybags to unlock portals, new areas to explore, and new abilities such as head bashing, climbing up ladders, and swimming underwater.
The ability to swim underwater. If you know my history with platform games, then the one thing I hate is being able to swim underwater. But thankfully, the controls for swimming underwater in Spyro 2 are great.
I never thought I would say this because most platform games that allows you to swim always doesn't have the best controls. Spyro 2 swimming is awesome, and honestly, Spyro moves great underwater, and if I accidentally lose a life, I know for a fact that it was my fault and not the controls of the underwater. I mentioned Moneybags a minute ago, so I should talk about him. But just who is Moneybags? Moneybags is a bear who loves money, 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 money. At any given point throughout the game when you need to progress, Moneybags will show up and he'll acknowledge that Spyro needs to pass, but in order to do so, Spyro needs to pay a small fee. He pretty much robs Spyro out of his gems just so that he can get more richer. And I have to say, I like this character. I know that some people out there don't, but he's just one of those characters that you gotta hate to love. The collecting in this game is better than the first game. Each collection feels like they do have a purpose with the exception of one. I've already mentioned the gems, but they are not the main collectibles this time around. The main items to collect are the orbs, and you have to earn these orbs by either doing some tough platforming or competing in minigames and challenges. The minigames are okay, but some of them can be really annoying at times.
And I swear to God, if that pelican says trouble with the trolley one more time, I'm gonna grab that fucking beak and turn it into my very own butt scratcher.
Butt scratcher? Butt scratcher? Get your butt scratcher here.
Another item to collect are the talisman. You earn these by finishing a level. They're not worth anything, and they don't offer anything, so they shouldn't exist. The enemies don't hold gems anymore, but instead, they hold a soul? I'm not exactly sure, but if you get enough souls, a small portal will open to unlock special power-ups for a limited amount of time, like unlimited fire breath, invulnerability, and supercharge.
Supercharge?
And this adds a whole new layer for the game, but doesn't completely overdo it. The flights now changed to speedways are so much funner and more better than the first game. What's cool about them is each speedway has a secret challenge you can partake, complete it successfully, and you'll get an orb. Another cool thing about the speedways is you can perform the supercharge.
Supercharge?
That joke is getting way too old now. I apologize.
The hub worlds in Spyro 2 are some of my favorite hub worlds in a video game, and I would go on to say that they're better than Spyro the Dragon's hub worlds. Each hub has something interesting about them, and accompanied by a smooth and relaxing soundtrack, it's just indescribably awesome. But not as awesome for what's in the Autumn Plains hub world. At the start, you'll see leaves falling and some more innocent sheep dying. Spyro, you are a murdering fucktard! But once Spyro learns how to climb up ladders, you get to explore inside the castle. While in the castle, you'll see one of the walls have a crack, and you can bust it up to reveal a new area to visit. You go on top of the castle and you notice a small platform just hiding away, and the moment when I glide to it, I had chills down my spine. And what was it all for? Just to collect an orb. I am lost for words. It was probably the most satisfying moment in my video gaming life. But now, how are the bosses in this game? There's only 3 bosses, which is smaller, but there is a saying, and that is less is more. The bosses are Crush, Gulp, and finally Ripto. It does look lackluster, but comparing them to the bosses in Spyro the Dragon, they are so much better. And, wait a minute, that's been the message throughout the entire video, hasn't it? Well, anyway, while Crush and Gulp's boss fights are simple, but Ripto, man, he's a good final boss. While you do have to beat him multiple times, but as long as you know what you're doing, the boss fight here is fun.
And as you can see, once you beat Ripto, he burns in lava, and we never see him again. I repeat, we never see him again!
Once you beat Ripto, Spyro saves the world of Avalar, and in return, our friends convince Moneybags to give our gems back. By tackling the holy hell out of him. And we can finally go on to that peaceful vacation in Dragon Shores.
Welcome to Dragon Shores, Spyro.
Sorry, but I can't let you into our little park until you found more gems and orbs in Avalon.
Yeah, I'm just gonna end the review here.
The best way to describe about Spyro 2 is, well, it's a really fun collectathon platform game that is much more better than the first game. Better soundtrack, better level designs, better purpose for collecting items, better hub worlds, and better bosses. If I really had to talk about any issues, I think the biggest one for me is at times, you will have to do some backtracking. It's not that big of a complaint, but backtracking is one of my big pet peeves in a video game. Other than that, Spyro 2 fixed everything that Spyro the Dragon lacked, and honestly, this is my favorite Spyro game in the series.
So with that done, it's time to move on to the next installment in Spyro 3, except it's not called Spyro 3, as it's called Spyro Year of the Dragon instead. Now this is the game that I grew up with and enjoyed playing as a kid over and over again. Although the last time I played it was when I was a little kid, but hopefully with the memories I have inside my head should give me a better and greater experience. And until next time, I'm just gonna relive my childhood right now.